The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide and tall, its crystal walls reflecting the light from 3 different suns. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their assigned seats, their strange forms and colors creating a rainbow of alien life. But today, the mood was dark. Han Sol walked slowly down the long path to the center of the hall. His black hair was neat, and his simple gray suit looked plain next to the bright robes and armor of the alien council members. Behind him walked Yuna, carrying a small bag of papers, and Jinwoo, whose military uniform was the only sign that humans took this meeting seriously. The Velthari spoke first. Their leader, tall and blue with 4 arms, stood up from his golden chair. His voice was deep and rang through the hall like a bell. Humans of Earth, you stand before this council for the 3rd time. 3 times you have broken our rules. 3 times you have acted without thinking of others. Han Sol stood quietly, his hands at his sides. He did not speak or move. The Nexari representative came next. She was small and gray, with large black eyes that seemed to see everything. Her voice was cold and sharp. Your people trade where they should not trade. They make deals that break our careful balance. They ask questions that should not be asked. More voices joined in. The Corvin, who looked like giant insects with metal parts on their bodies, clicked and buzzed their anger. Humans fight wars in ways that make no sense. They help weak species that should stay weak. They change things that should not change. Other species added their complaints. The humans were too loud, too fast, too different. They did not follow the old ways. They did not respect the careful order that had kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. Han Sol listened to it all. His face showed nothing. Yuna stood beside him, her notebook ready, but she did not write anything down. Jinwoo watched the alien faces around them, counting how many species were here today. Finally, the great voice of the council speaker filled the hall. The speaker was ancient, older than any other being in the galaxy. Its form was like smoke and light, always changing, never solid. Humans of Earth, this council has made its choice. You will follow our ways, or you will leave our space. The hall went quiet. Every alien eye looked at the 3 humans standing in the center. The speaker continued. You have 30 days to choose. Change your ways and follow our rules in all things. Stop your wild trading. Stop your strange wars. Stop asking questions that disturb the peace or leave our space forever. The silence stretched on. The aliens waited for the humans to argue, to beg, to make promises they could not keep. They had seen this before with other young species. First came anger, then fear, then desperate bargaining. But Han Sol just nodded slowly. He looked around the great hall, taking in the faces of species that humans had worked with for 50 years, species they had helped, traded with, learned from, and taught. We understand, Han Sol said. His voice was calm and clear. Thank you for making your position clear. He turned to Yuna and Jinwoo. Let us go home. The 3 humans walked toward the door. No hurried steps, no angry words, no looking back. Their footsteps echoed in the silent hall. The Veltari leader called out, "You have 30 days to decide." Han Sol stopped at the door and turned back. "We have decided. Good luck with your future plans." Then they were gone. The great hall erupted, in confused voices. This was not how it was supposed to happen. Young species always fought back when faced with exile. They made speeches about their rights. They offered tributes and promises. They begged for another chance. The Nexari representatives, large eyes blinked slowly. Did they understand what we told them? The Corvin buzzed among themselves. Perhaps their translation devices failed? But the council speaker knew better. Its ancient mind had seen many species come and go. They understood perfectly. The question is, do we understand what just happened? Outside the Great Hall, Han Sol walked with his team toward their ship. The space station around the council chambers was busy with aliens from 100 worlds. Many of them nodded to the humans as they passed. Some even smiled in their alien ways. "Ambassador," Yuna said quietly, "should we contact Earth Command? They will want to know about the Council's decision." "Yes," Han Sol replied. "Send the message. Tell them exactly what happened. Tell them we are coming home." Jinwoo looked back at the Great Hall one last time. 50 years of friendship, gone. In one meeting. Perhaps it was never real friendship, Han Sol said. Real friends do not make you choose between being yourself and being accepted. Their ship was small compared to the giant vessels of other species. It looked simple and gray, built for work, rather than show. As they walked up the ramp, Han Sol felt strangely free. The weight of trying to fit into the galactic community was lifting from his shoulders. In the control room, Yuna sent their message to Earth. It was short and simple. Council has demanded conformity or exile. We chose exile, coming home. Recommend immediate review of all galactic agreements. As their ship pulled away from the station, Jinwoo watched the great structure grow smaller behind them. What do you think will happen now? Han Sol sat in his chair and closed his eyes. I think we are about to find out what humans can do when no one is watching us or telling us how to behave. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the 3 humans back toward Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council was still arguing about what the humans had meant by their calm acceptance of exile. None of the aliens realized they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They thought they were removing a problem. They had no idea they were about to lose the one species that had been holding their ancient, tired civilization together. The humans were going home, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months had passed since the humans left the Galactic Council. The Great Hall still held its meetings, but something felt different. The Velthari noticed it first during their trade discussions. The Nexari felt it during their research reviews. Even the proud Corvin sensed a change in the air. Minho stood on the observation deck of the human colony ship Harmony, watching the last transport leave the joint mining station on Kepler 442b. The station had been a success story of human Velthari, cooperation for 15 years. Now it belonged to the Velthari alone. All personnel are aboard. reported his assistant, checking her tablet. The Velthari station manager wants to speak with you before we leave. Minho nodded. He had expected this. The blue-skinned alien appeared on the communication screen, his forearms moving in what humans had learned was a sign of distress. Director Minho, please reconsider. Your people built half of this station. Your mining techniques increased our output by 60%. How can you just leave? Our contract expires today, Minho replied calmly. We have fulfilled all our obligations. The station is yours, along with all the improvements we made. We wish you success. The Velthari's skin darkened with confusion. But surely we can make a new agreement? Better terms? More profit sharing? Minho shook his head gently. We are focusing on our own projects now. Thank you for the partnership. It was valuable for both our peoples. The screen went dark. Around him, Minho's team worked quietly, preparing for the jump to human space. No one complained about leaving behind 15 years of work. No one seemed upset about losing the profitable mining operation. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Research Station Proxima 7, Su-Jin packed up the laboratory equipment that her team had brought. The Nexari scientists watched with their large black eyes as boxes of human technology were loaded onto transport ships. Dr. Su-Jin, the Nexari research leader, spoke in her thin, precise voice. Your plasma containment research is only half finished. If you leave now, years of work will be wasted. Su-Jin sealed another box of delicate instruments. The research is not wasted. We have given you copies of all our data up to this point. You have skilled scientists. I am sure you will find a way to continue, but your approach to the problem is unique. Your team thinks in ways that ours cannot. We need that difference of perspective. You will develop your own approaches, Su-Jin said with a small smile. Often, the best solutions come from working within your own strengths. The Nexari was quiet for a moment. This is about the Council's decision, is it not? We could speak to them. Many species respected humanity's contributions. Su-Jin picked up the last box. The Council made their choice. We respect that choice. Now we make ours. On the military outpost at Wolf 359, Dae-hyun supervised the shutdown of the intelligence sharing network that humans had built with the Corvin. The insect-like aliens watched nervously as human technicians disconnected the quantum communication. Arrays. Colonel Dae-hyun, the Corvin commander buzzed. This network has prevented 3 major conflicts in our sector. Without human coordination, how will we respond to threats? Dae-hyun checked his tablet as another system went offline. You have excellent military minds and strong fleets. You will adapt. But your early warning systems see patterns that ours miss. Your strategic planning considers factors that we overlook. Then you will learn to see those patterns yourselves, Dae-hyun replied. Military necessity often drives innovation. The Corvin's metal implants clicked as he shifted nervously. Are all human military bases being closed? All joint operations are ending, Dae-hyun confirmed. We are returning to purely human space. Within 6 months, the pattern was clear across the galaxy. Human merchant ships stopped arriving at alien ports. Human research teams politely finished their projects and left. Human colonies in mixed species systems evacuated quietly, leaving behind infrastructure and improvements as gifts to their former neighbors. The humans kept their word on every contract. They delivered promised goods, completed agreed-upon research, and fulfilled every obligation down to the smallest detail. But when contracts ended, they were not renewed. When partnerships reached their natural conclusion, new ones were not begun. At first, many alien species barely noticed. The Velthari assumed that human merchants would return once they realized how much profit they were losing. The Nexari believed that human researchers would come back when they needed access to galactic databases. The Corvin expected human military, advisors to return when the next crisis emerged. But as months passed, the absence grew more obvious. Trade routes that had run smoothly for decades began showing delays. Research projects that had progressed steadily suddenly slowed down. Military responses that had been swift and coordinated became confused and inefficient. On Earth, in the Global Defense Command Center, Daehyun met with other military leaders who had returned from their galactic postings. The room was full of humans who had spent years working with alien species, building relationships and trust that were now being quietly severed. "Status report from Sector 7, one officer announced. "All human personnel withdrawn. Joint bases transferred to local species control. All shared technology properly documented and left for their use." Another officer continued. "Sector 12, complete withdrawal. The Zephyrians asked 3 times if we would reconsider. They offered to double our territorial allowance." "Our response?" Daehyun asked. Standard reply. "We thank them for their offer and wish them well in their future endeavors." The pattern was the same everywhere. Aliens were beginning to realize that the humans were serious about their withdrawal. Some species had begun reaching out through diplomatic channels, asking if agreements could be reached. Others had tried to contact human colonies directly, offering better terms and more respect. All received the same polite but firm response. Humanity was focusing on internal development. They wished their former partners well. In the research facilities on Mars, Sujin worked with technologies that had been developed in partnership with alien species. But now, her team was taking those technologies in new directions, free from the limitations that galactic cooperation had required. Dr. Sujin, her assistant, called from across the laboratory. "The plasma containment system is stable at 97% efficiency. Should we share the breakthrough with our former Nexari partners?" Sujin considered for a moment. "No. This research is for humanity now. We will develop it fully before deciding what to do with it." Similar decisions were being made across human space. Technologies that had been shared freely were now being developed in secret. Trade routes that had connected human and alien markets were being redirected to serve only human needs. Military strategies that had protected mixed populations were being refocused on human security alone. The humans were not angry. They were not seeking revenge. They were simply turning inward, focusing on their own species and their own future. But in doing so, they were removing something from galactic civilization that had been far more important than anyone had realized. The galaxy was about to learn what it had lost when it chose conformity over cooperation, and the humans were about to discover what they could achieve when no one was telling them how to behave. The first sign of trouble came from the shipping lanes. Commander Zeltar of the Velthari commercial fleet stared at his navigation display with growing confusion. The trade route between Velthar Prime and the Nexari research worlds, once the most efficient path in the galaxy, was experiencing massive delays. "Navigation officer," Zeltar called with his deep voice, "explain these routing problems." The younger Velthari's blue skin paled. "Sir, the traffic management system is not working properly. Ships are taking wrong turns, missing transfer points, and arriving at destinations 3 days late." Zeltar's four arms moved in frustration. "This system has worked perfectly for 20 years. What has changed?" "That is the problem, sir. Nothing has changed. We are using the same routes, the same coordinates, the same timing, but somehow it is not working anymore." What Zeltar did not know was that the routing system had been quietly improved over the years by human logistics experts. Small changes, barely noticed at the time, had made the difference between a good system and a perfect one. Humans had studied traffic patterns, identified bottlenecks, and suggested timing adjustments that reduced travel time by 30%. Now those humans were gone, and the old system was showing its age. On the Nexari research world of Cygnus 4, Dr. Vexara faced a different kind of problem. She stood in her laboratory, surrounded by equipment that had once produced breakthrough discoveries almost monthly. Now, progress had slowed to a crawl. "Status report," she demanded in her sharp voice. Her research team, all Nexari with their characteristic large black eyes, looked uncomfortable. "Dr. Vexara, the quantum resonance project has stalled. We cannot reproduce the results from our previous experiments. The biomedical research has similar problems," another scientist added. "Our genetic modification techniques are not working as expected." Vexara's eyes narrowed. "These are proven methods. We have used them successfully for 5 years." "Yes, but—" the first scientist hesitated. "We believe the problem is in our theoretical framework. Some of our basic assumptions appear to be incorrect." What the Nexari did not realize was how much their recent success had depended on human theoretical insights. Humans had a way of looking at problems from unexpected angles, suggesting connections that the logical Nexari minds missed. Working with human researchers had pushed Nexari science in new directions that were now proving impossible to continue alone. The problems were not limited to trade and research. On the Corvin military base at Rigel 7, General Thaktor faced a crisis that threatened the security of 3 star systems. "Report?" he buzzed, his metal implants clicking with agitation. "Sir, the early warning network has failed to detect 3 separate incursions into our territory this month. Pirates have struck twice in areas that should have been secure. Our response times have increased by 400%. Thaktor's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. "Have our sensors malfunctioned?" "No, sir. All equipment is working properly. But our threat assessment protocols appear to be inadequate. We are missing patterns that should be obvious." The truth was that human military advisors had quietly revolutionized Corvin tactical thinking. They had taught the insect-like warriors to consider factors beyond immediate military strength: economic pressures, social unrest, historical grievances. This broader perspective had made Corvan security incredibly effective. Without it, they were back to their old methods, which were strong but narrow. Across the galaxy, similar problems were emerging. The Zephyrians, a species of energy beings, found that their power distribution networks were becoming unstable. The Rigelians discovered that their atmospheric processors were working at only 60% efficiency. The Tau Satians realized that their communication networks were failing to handle the message load. In every case, the immediate cause seemed minor. A small glitch here, a minor inefficiency there. But the cumulative effect was growing larger every day. Meanwhile, in human space, a very different story was unfolding. Yunbi worked in the engineering section of the Luna Station, designing improvements to human infrastructure that no longer needed to accommodate alien requirements. "Director," she called to her supervisor, "the new fusion reactor design is ready for testing. Without the safety restrictions that the Galactic Council required, we can increase power output by 40%. Her supervisor, Chang Min, nodded approvingly. "Excellent. What about the environmental impact?" "Much better than before. The restrictions were designed for species with different atmospheric needs. For human worlds, this design is both more powerful and cleaner." In the medical research facility on Titan, Dr. Na-Ri was making similar discoveries. The genetic therapy techniques we developed with the Nexari were promising, but we had to compromise to make them safe for multiple species. Working with purely human genetics, we can achieve much better results. Her assistant looked up from her microscope. "How much better?" "Treatment times reduced from months to weeks. Success rates increased from 70% to 95%. And we can target conditions that were previously impossible to treat." These improvements were happening across all areas of human development. Agricultural systems designed for human worlds produced more food with less resources. Transportation networks built for human needs moved people and goods more efficiently. Communication systems optimized for human language and thought patterns processed information faster and more accurately. The humans had not realized how much they had been holding themselves back to fit into galactic society. The need to accommodate alien requirements, to work within galactic regulations, to consider the needs of dozens of different species had forced them to use less efficient solutions. Now, working alone, they were discovering their true potential. Back on Velthar Prime, Commander Zeltar was meeting with the planet's Economic Council. The trade problems were getting worse, not better. "The shipping delays are costing us millions of credits per day," reported the Trade Minister. "Our agreements with other species assume reliable delivery times. We are facing penalty payments and contract cancellations." "What about hiring new logistics consultants?" Zeltar suggested. "We have tried, but none of our consultants understand the human methods that made our system so efficient. They can tell us what is wrong, but not how to fix it." The economic minister's blue skin darkened with worry. "Perhaps we should contact the humans directly. Offer them a contract to fix our shipping problems." There was silence in the room. Finally, the trade minister spoke. I tried that last week. Their response was polite but clear. They are no longer accepting contracts outside human space. Similar conversations were happening on every world that had once worked with humans. The problems were growing larger, and the solutions were becoming more difficult to find. The Galactic Council had assumed that removing humans would make the galaxy more orderly and predictable. Instead, they were discovering that humans had been the force that kept their orderly systems working smoothly. Without human innovation to solve unexpected problems, without human flexibility to adapt to changing conditions, without human creativity to find new solutions, the ancient systems of galactic civilization were beginning to break down. And in human space, humanity was just beginning to realize what they could accomplish when they were free to work in their own way, without compromise or limitation. The galaxy was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between conformity and cooperation. 1 year had passed since the humans walked away from the Galactic Council. What had started as small problems had grown into a crisis that threatened the stability of galactic civilization. On Velthar Prime, Supreme Commander Korthak stood before the Council of Houses, his blue skin almost black with stress. Behind him, a massive display showed shipping routes across Velthari space, most of them marked in red to indicate severe delays or complete failures. The situation is worse than we reported last month, Korthak announced. 30% of our trade routes are no longer functional. The shipping networks that once carried goods between our worlds in days now take weeks. Some routes have been abandoned entirely. Elder Valana, the oldest member of the council, raised one of her 4 arms. Have we identified the cause of these failures? We have tried, Korthak replied. Our best engineers have studied the routing systems for months. They tell us that the systems are working exactly as designed. The problem is that the original design had flaws that were somehow corrected over time. Now those corrections are gone. Gone? Elder Valana's voice carried confusion. How do corrections simply disappear? We believe the corrections were never formally recorded. They were improvements made by human advisors during joint planning sessions. Small changes that seemed minor at the time, but made the difference between an adequate system and an excellent one. The council chamber fell silent. The Velthari had always prided themselves on their detailed record-keeping and careful planning. The idea that critical improvements had been made without proper documentation was deeply disturbing. On Nexari Prime, Dr. Vexara faced an even more serious crisis. She stood in what had once been the galaxy's most advanced research facility. But now half the laboratories stood empty and unused. Status of the quantum research program? She asked her remaining staff. Suspended indefinitely, came the reply. We cannot replicate the theoretical framework that made our breakthroughs possible. Without that framework, most of our advanced projects are impossible to continue. The biomedical research? Also suspended. The genetic modification techniques we developed require theoretical approaches that our scientists cannot reproduce alone. Vexara's large black eyes reflected the empty laboratories around her. How many of our research programs are still functional? 17%, Dr. Vexara. All others depend on methods or insights that we developed in partnership with human researchers. The scope of the problem was staggering. The Nexari had believed that they were the intellectual leaders of the galaxy, that human participation in their research was merely helpful rather than essential. Now they were learning that their greatest achievements had been built on foundations that they did not fully understand. The crisis was not limited to trade and research. On the Corvan military world of Kepler 438b, General Thaktor watched as his forces struggled with their most basic responsibilities. "Report from Sector 12, his aide buzzed nervously. 3 more pirate attacks this week. Our response teams arrived too late in each case. The raiders escaped with minimal resistance. Sector 7? 2 smuggling operations detected and lost before we could intercept them. The criminal organization seemed to know our patrol patterns better than we do." Thaktor's metal implants clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "How is this possible? We have the same ships, the same weapons, the same sensors we had when we were the most effective military force in the galaxy. Sir, the problem appears to be in our strategic thinking. We are responding to threats the same way we always have, but somehow our methods are no longer effective." What Thaktor did not fully understand was how much human strategic advisors had changed Corvan military thinking. Humans had taught them to consider not just where enemies might attack, but why they might attack, when they would be most vulnerable, and how economic and social factors affected military planning. This broader perspective had made the Corvan incredibly effective at preventing conflicts before they started and ending them quickly when they began. Now, back to their old methods of simple tactical response, the Corvan were always one step behind their enemies. The problems were spreading beyond the major powers. Smaller species throughout the galaxy were discovering that systems they had taken for granted were failing. The Rigelians found that their terraforming projects were stalling without human engineering input. The Zephyrians discovered that their energy distribution networks, once perfectly balanced, were becoming unstable. The Tau Cetians realized that their interstellar communication systems could no longer handle the message volume that had once flowed smoothly. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council became more frequent, but the discussions always reached the same dead end. Everyone agreed that the problems were related to the human withdrawal, but no one knew how to solve them without human help. "Perhaps we could offer them better terms," suggested the Velthari representative during one particularly tense session. "We tried that 6 months ago," the Nexari replied. "They politely declined all offers." "What about indirect contact?" the Corvan representative buzzed. "Through species that maintained good relations with humans?" "The humans have cut all official contact with galactic civilization," the council speaker intoned. "They respond to all inquiries with the same message. They are focusing on internal development and wish us well in our endeavors." While galactic civilization struggled with cascading failures, humanity was experiencing unprecedented growth and innovation. On Mars, Hyun Woo led a research team that was making breakthroughs at a pace that would have been impossible under galactic oversight. "The new propulsion system is ready for testing," he announced to his team. Without the restrictions that the Galactic Council placed on potentially dangerous technologies, we can achieve faster-than-light speeds that are 40% faster than anything currently in use. His assistant, so young, looked up from her calculations. What about safety protocols? Much safer than before, Hyun-woo replied. The galactic protocols were designed to account for the most fragile species in the galaxy. For human physiology and human engineering, we can push much further while maintaining better safety margins. In the asteroid belt, mining operations, run entirely by humans, were producing resources at rates that had never been achieved in joint operations. On Europa, agricultural research was developing food production methods that could support much larger populations on worlds previously considered marginal. Most importantly, human military leader Jae-min was overseeing the development of defensive systems that no alien species had ever imagined. Status of the planetary defense grid? He asked his engineering team. Online and fully functional, sir. The new shield. Generators can protect entire star systems, not just individual worlds, and the early warning network extends beyond our borders in all directions. Detection capability. We can identify and track any ship larger than a fighter craft within 50 light-years of human space. The system is completely automated and requires no external input or cooperation. These achievements were not accidents, free from the need to compromise with alien requirements, to share sensitive information with potential competitors, or to limit their development to avoid threatening other species. Humans were discovering their true technological potential. But perhaps more importantly, they were developing a sense of unity and purpose that had been impossible while trying to balance the needs of dozens of different alien cultures. As the second year of human isolation began, the galaxy faced a choice. They could continue to struggle with the collapse of systems they had never fully understood, or they could swallow their pride and ask for human help. But the humans had made their choice clear. They were no longer interested in being junior partners in someone else's vision of galactic civilization. They were building something new, something better, something that belonged entirely to them. And the galaxy was beginning to realize that they might have lost humanity forever. 2 years had passed since humanity's quiet departure from galactic affairs. The crisis that had begun with shipping delays and research problems had grown into something that threatened the very foundation of galactic civilization. Won-jae sat in his study on Earth, writing in the journal that had become his life's work. As a philosopher and historian, he had been documenting humanity's great experiment in isolation. His words would someday help future generations understand what had happened during these crucial years. Day 731 of the isolation period, he wrote. Reports from our monitoring stations show that galactic civilization is approaching complete breakdown. What began as minor inefficiencies has cascaded into system-wide failures. The aliens still do not understand what they have lost. Outside his window, Earth looked more beautiful than it had in decades. The skies were clearer, the cities more efficient, the people more united. Humanity had found a way to thrive without galactic interference. The truth was more complex than even Won-jae realized. Humanity had not simply been participants in galactic civilization. They had been its invisible foundation. On Velthar Prime, the crisis had reached the breaking point. Supreme Commander Korthak stood before an emergency session of the Council of Houses, delivering news that would have been unthinkable 3 years earlier. "The outer colonies are in revolt," he announced. "Without reliable supply lines, they can no longer maintain their loyalty to the central government. The Seventh Fleet has declared independence. The mining worlds of the Kepler system have formed their own confederation." Elder Velana, now showing her advanced age in the deepening blue of her skin, spoke with a voice heavy with defeat. "How many systems remain under central authority?" 43%, Elder. And that number decreases each week. The collapse was not limited to the Velthari. Across the galaxy, the careful balance that had maintained peace and prosperity for thousands of years was falling apart. The Nexari faced a different but equally devastating crisis. Dr. Vexara, once the head of the galaxy's most advanced research institution, now supervised a handful of basic projects that would have been considered primitive decades earlier. "We have lost contact with 17 research stations," she reported to the Nexari High Council. "Without the theoretical frameworks developed during human collaboration, most of our advanced facilities cannot maintain their operations." "What about the younger scientists?" asked Council Member Zarek. "Can they not develop new approaches?" "They were trained in methods that depended on human insights," Vexara replied. "Without that foundation, they cannot advance beyond basic research. We have essentially regressed 50 years in scientific capability. The Corvin military, once the strongest force in the galaxy, had become a shadow of its former self. General Thaktor faced the humiliation of requesting help from smaller species that the Corvin had once protected. Our fleet strength is down to 30% effectiveness," he reported to the Corvin Supreme Command. "Pirate attacks have increased by 800%. Smuggling operations run openly in our territory. 3 colonies have been lost to raiders that we failed to detect until it was too late." "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Commander Kraktul. "We have the same ships, the same weapons, the same training we have always had." "The difference is in our strategic thinking, Supreme Commander. Human advisors taught us to see patterns that we now miss, to consider factors that we now ignore, to anticipate problems that we now encounter only after they become disasters." But the true scope of humanity's role in galactic civilization was only becoming clear through careful analysis. Mi Kyung, head of Human Strategic Planning, worked with a team of analysts to document exactly what humanity had contributed to their former partners. "The shipping network analysis is complete," her assistant reported. "Human logistics experts had improved the efficiency of galactic trade routes by an average of 37%. In some cases, the improvement was over 60%. What about research collaboration? Human theoretical contributions were present in 84% of major scientific breakthroughs over the past 50 years. In many cases, the human insights were so fundamental that the research cannot continue without them. Military assistance? Human strategic advisors had reduced conflict resolution time by 72% and prevented an estimated 93 potential wars through early intervention and diplomatic innovation. Mi-kyung studied the data with growing amazement. How did we do so much without anyone noticing? It appears that our approach was to solve problems quietly rather than take credit publicly. We made improvements seem natural and obvious rather than revolutionary. The analysis revealed something that even humans had not fully understood about themselves. Their contribution to galactic civilization had not been in grand gestures or obvious superiority. It had been in countless small improvements, creative solutions, and innovative approaches that had quietly made everything work better. While the galaxy collapsed, humanity had used their isolation to achieve things that would have been impossible under galactic oversight. Taeho, now commanding the Human Defense Force, oversaw military capabilities that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Fleet status report, he requested from his command center on Luna. All defensive systems online and fully operational. Commander, the new ships are completing their trials ahead of schedule. Performance exceeds projections by 23%. What about our exploration program? The scout fleets have identified 47 potentially habitable worlds beyond galactic borders. 3 deep space colonies are already under construction. The new faster-than-light drives are allowing us to expand into regions that no galactic species has ever reached. Humanity was not just surviving in isolation. They were expanding beyond the galaxy itself, creating a civilization that did not depend on alien cooperation or approval. The final revelation came from an unexpected source. The council speaker, the ancient entity that had overseen galactic civilization for millennia, requested a private meeting with the leaders of the major species. I have made a terrible error, the speaker admitted, its form of light and smoke flickering with what might have been regret. In my eons of existence, I have seen many species rise and fall. I believed I understood the patterns of galactic civilization. The assembled leaders waited in silence. Humans were not just another species seeking their place in our order, the speaker continued. They were the force that kept our order alive and growing. Without their innovation, our civilization had become static. Without their flexibility, our systems had become rigid. Without their creativity, our solutions had become inadequate. Are you saying the humans were more important than we realized? Asked the Velthari elder. I am saying that humans were not trying to fit into our civilization. They were keeping our civilization from collapse, and we expelled them for being too different to conform to the very systems they were quietly saving. The truth hit the assembled leaders like a physical blow. They had not removed a disruptive element from their society. They had removed the element that made their society work. As the 3rd year of human isolation began, the galaxy faced a choice between slow collapse and the humiliation of admitting their mistake. But the humans had moved beyond needing galactic approval. They were building something new among the stars, something that belonged entirely to them, and they had no intention of looking back. 3 years had passed since the humans walked away from the Galactic Council. The galaxy that had once been proud and united was now fractured and struggling. But on Earth, in the simple office of the Global Leadership Council, Sung-ho prepared to address a message that had arrived that morning from the farthest reaches of space. The message was unlike anything the galaxy had ever sent before. It was not a demand or a warning. It was an apology. President Sung Ho, his aide Ye Jin announced as she entered his office. The Galactic Council's message has been verified as authentic. All major species have signed it, including the Council. Speaker itself, Sung Ho nodded calmly. He was a man who had learned patience during humanity's darkest hours, and that patience had served him well as leader during their greatest transformation. "What are the terms of their offer?" he asked, though he had already read the message 3 times. "Complete restoration of human membership in the Galactic Council," Ye Jin read from her tablet. "Automatic veto power over any future decisions affecting humanity. Exclusive territorial rights to any systems humans choose to claim. Priority access to all galactic research and trade networks. And formal recognition of humanity as a foundational species with special status." Sung Ho walked to his window, looking out at the Earth that had become the heart of something greater than the aliens could imagine. "And what do they want in return?" "For humanity to share our wisdom and innovation with the galactic community once again," as they put it. "They are asking us to help them rebuild what has been lost." In the years since human withdrawal, the galaxy had learned the hard way what they had given up. The Velthari Empire had fractured into dozens of independent systems, their trade networks so broken that some worlds had reverted to pre-industrial societies. The Nexari had lost 70% of their scientific capabilities, with entire fields of research abandoned because the theoretical foundations had been lost. The mighty Corvan military had become so ineffective that pirates and raiders operated openly in what had once been the most secure regions of space. But the message that sat on Sung Ho's desk was not just an admission of failure. It was a desperate plea for survival. "Mr. President," the message read, "we have come to understand that our decision 3 years ago was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of humanity's role in galactic civilization. We believed you were disruptive elements that needed to be controlled. We now realize you were the foundation that kept our entire civilization stable and growing." The message continued with details that showed just how thoroughly the aliens had studied their own collapse. "Without human innovation, our systems became static and brittle. Without human flexibility, our institutions could not adapt to changing conditions. Without human creativity, our solutions became inadequate for the challenges we faced. The Galactic Council formally apologizes for our error and humbly requests that humanity consider returning to help us rebuild what we have lost together." Sung Ho had expected this message for months. Human monitoring stations had been tracking the cascade of failures across galactic civilization. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment. "Schedule a meeting with the full Leadership Council," Sung Ho told Ye Jin. "It is time to make our decision official." The meeting took place in the same chamber where humanity had decided to accept exile 3 years earlier. But the people gathered there now were not the same. They had been transformed by isolation into something stronger and more unified than they had ever been while trying to fit into galactic society. Dong Hyun, representing the generation of humans who had grown up during the isolation, spoke first. Mr. President, many of us have never known galactic society. We have built our lives, our careers, and our dreams around purely human civilization. Why should we give that up to help species that rejected us? Ye Jin, who had lived through the transition, offered a different perspective. The question is not whether we should help them. The question is whether we need them at all. In 3 years, we have achieved more technological and social progress than we had in the previous 50 years of galactic cooperation. Other voices joined the discussion, but the consensus was clear. Humanity had moved beyond needing galactic civilization. They had colonies beyond the galaxy's edge, technologies that surpassed anything the aliens possessed, and a unity of purpose that made them stronger than they had ever been. Finally, Sung-Ho spoke. The aliens are asking us to return to save their civilization, but they are not offering us partnership. They are offering us dominance. They want to make us the leaders of the same system that once rejected us. And your recommendation, Mr. President? Asked Dong-hyun. My recommendation is that we politely decline. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not return to save galactic civilization because humanity no longer needed galactic civilization. Sung-Ho personally recorded the message that would be sent to the Galactic Council. He sat in his office, looking directly into the camera, speaking in the calm, measured tone that had become his trademark. To the Galactic Council and all member species, he began, we have received your message and appreciate your honesty about the mistakes that were made. We harbor no anger or resentment about the past. You made the choice that seemed right to you at the time, and we respect that choice. However, we must respectfully decline your invitation to return to galactic society. Over the past 3 years, humanity has found its own path among the stars. We have built a civilization that reflects our values, serves our needs, and allows us to reach our full potential. We are no longer seeking acceptance or partnership from galactic civilization because we no longer need it. We wish you success in rebuilding your societies and solving the challenges you face. Perhaps someday, when both our civilizations have grown and changed, we will meet again as equals under different circumstances. Until then, we will continue on our own journey among the stars. We thank you for the lessons we learned during our time in galactic society, both the pleasant ones and the difficult ones. All of them helped make us who we are today. The message was sent without ceremony or fanfare, no dramatic declarations, no angry words, no threats or ultimatums. Just a simple, polite refusal that made it clear humanity had moved beyond needing galactic approval. The response from the galaxy was immediate and desperate. Within days, individual species began sending their own messages, offering even better terms, more territory, greater privileges. Some alien governments sent envoys to the edge of human space, begging for meetings that were politely declined. But humanity had made their choice. They were no longer the same species that had once sought acceptance from galactic civilization. 3 years of independence had transformed them into something new, something that did not need anyone's permission to exist or thrive. From his command ship at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, Captain Dong-hyun watched the stars that no galactic species had ever reached. Behind him, human colonies were growing on worlds that offered opportunities beyond anything the old galaxy could provide. "Navigation officer," he called. "Set course for the unexplored systems in Sector 7. Let us see what is waiting for us out there." As his ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying humanity further into the infinite possibilities of space, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session to discuss their growing crisis. But their discussions no longer mattered to humanity. The species that had once sought acceptance from galactic civilization was now writing its own destiny among the stars, free from the limitations and compromises that had once held them back. The humans had strolled away silently, just as the title predicted, and the galactic civilization that had rejected them was left to face the consequences of losing the one species that had been keeping their ancient, tired systems alive. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not conquest or revenge. It was simply the freedom to become everything they were capable of being without anyone telling them what that should look like. The galaxy had suffered greatly from their choice, but humanity had discovered something far more valuable than galactic acceptance. They had found themselves,